Alright, this is my assault rifle raid build, can be used hybrid LMG as well. So specialization, survivalist, protection from elites 15%. You get the armor kit, which is essentially a buffed chem launcher. You get 15% increased outgoing healing, which also affects yourself and party members. And then you also get the incendiary grenade, which is great, better than the other grenades in my opinion, and the 15% assault rifle. Now you could run sharpshooter, obviously you get the reload speed, stability and headshot damage. However, I prefer to have the survivability from survivalist, and I much prefer the crossbow to the TAC 50. So as for gear, I'm running a custom P416 with Optimist, hence the 5 reds here, and I'm running that with an ACOG scope. So with the what's going on there we go, with the scope, even though you don't technically zoom in when you're normally scoping through it, it still procs the Nemesis holstered talent, and then if you press tab that will physically scope in as well, but you don't have to physically scope to still get the bonus damage, which means that it doesn't affect your normal AR gameplay if you don't use scopes like that. So I'm running that, and then just show you the Nemesis. So with the Nemesis you get preparation. While holstered, gain 25% headshot damage when scoped with your current weapon. I don't particularly use the Nemesis that often, it's more for the holstered talent. For the mask, now I'm running 33% hazard protection. 2-piece Gila gives me another 20% hazard protection. Ideally I'd like to have the 33% as not modified, and then I would modify the damage to elites to be higher. But this is just the piece I've got. If you have something better, that's great. And I'm running hard hitting. For mods, most of the mods that I'm running, instead of giving myself bonus armor and things like that, I'm doing resist. So this one has 15% burn resist. If we go to the Fenris chest, 2-piece again, that's for assault rifle damage and protection from elites. This one's got a high roll of 15% weapon damage. Now keep in mind that we are giving up compensated, so you have to make up for that compensated elsewhere, and we'll go over that in a bit as well. Unbreakable and hard hitting. Now the reason I'm using Unbreakable is because in the raid you'll take one-shot damage here and there, and Unbreakable will save you. It's basically a free life every minute. It's got a 1-minute internal cooldown, so that works great. And I find that in the raid against boss fights you're not really getting any benefit from things like Unstoppable Force, where you have to get a kill first, or on kill effects don't seem to work that great in the raid. Again, we've got burn resist and disrupt resist here. With the holster, you've got another Fenris holster here, and that stats don't really matter so much. I'm running precise for headshot damage, as I'm already doing the Nemesis perk, so I'm aiming for headshots. You could swap this for the devastating for 5%, which I would if you're running the hybrid LMG version, which I'll show you now. So if you wanted to run a hybrid with LMG as your secondary, obviously you lose that bonus holstered talent from Nemesis. But this works out pretty well in certain fights, like the last fight where you have to break the glass. Having an LMG with 100 bullets that you could just sit there and shoot with works better, even though it does less damage than an AR. So you would swap out preferably the Fenris holster, because you're not going to lose much from that at all. You'll lose the 10% protection from elites, and you swap that for a Petrov holster, you get that 10% LMG damage, and run that as your hybrid. You could swap out the Fenris chest, but Fenris chests have 2 talents, so you're losing a lot more. And also, if you have a high roll like this, 15%, and you don't have another 15% to put on a Petrov, you'd be losing some damage there as well. So swapping that holster essentially makes it into a hybrid LMG AR build, and you swap out the Nemesis for an LMG with 100 bullets. So you could use like a classic M60 or a black market M60. You could even use a Para, I believe, like that. That's all down to personal preference. And then again with that, I won't go too much into it, but unhinged works well, or steady-handed works well with those. If you were going to run the LMG hybrid, you could also swap. So these Gila and these here, I'm running Gila again for the 2-piece, but I could swap this for armor. Now if you're going to run the LMG version, you might want to get Gila with a major talent, and instead of having the 10% hard hitting here, you might prefer to have braced, which could help you in certain situations if you can't control that LMG. From here we've got True Patriot. So 2-piece True Patriot, that's 10% damage to armor. This is multiplicative, so just think about it as it takes into account all your damage and then adds 10% of that on top. So it's just a flat 10% bonus damage. We're running assault rifle damage here. The health is give or take. With the backpack, again, this is to make the second 2-piece True Patriot. Now this is 10.5% weapon damage. Now That could be, I think 15 is a max roll, I believe. Could be wrong there. And the mod again is resist. So this is explosive resist and total armor. I could swap this for more resistances elsewhere, but I'm happy with that. I've got enough resist, which I'll show you after. Now, you want to get as high a roll on the weapon damage as possible in all builds, but especially because we're losing out compensated here by running 5 reds. So you make up for that with hopefully 15% here, but in this case 10, plus the 10% that you get from True Patriot, so that works out well. As far as skills go, there's no reason to be running 7 or even 5 yellows on this build. We're not going to be running on the ropes because you're in a raid and you're probably going to be taking Chem Launcher and Hive, which is preferable, and Spotter on the mask would work good as well for that 10%, that 20% for 10 seconds on your damage, but again, you don't really want to swap out Chem Launcher and Hive. You prefer to run these for the raid, it's just better for the team and yourself. Let's go down the shooting range. So from here, let's have a look at the stats. So we've got resist. With resistances, with the mods that I've got, plus the resist from the mask and the 2-piece Gila, that's 53% hazard protection. That goes to everything. And then with the additional mods, I've got 94% burn resist, 90% shock resist, 60 disorient, and 71 disrupt. Now, the burn resist is great. Shock resist is just as good because, you know, if you do get shocked, even though it happens rarely, it's usually a death if something's aiming at you. And I'll show you this in effect. So if we go and change this to an incendiary grenade, the way resist works, it's not that you take 94% less damage, it's that you have a 94% chance to resist 100% of the damage. So if you were to throw an explosive grenade and you have 50% explosive resist, it's not that you're going to take 50% less damage, you're actually going to have 50% chance to negate the damage completely, and the other 50% chance you'll take full damage. So let's throw this incendiary, and I should take no damage, or I might get 1 tick of damage here and there. So as you can see, my health is not going down. My character doesn't get studded by the burning. You can still aim, which is great, so burning doesn't affect you whatsoever. That's all just from using this mask with the 33%, the 20% hazard protection, and then the mods in your utility slots for generics. You can have burn resist, or if you have the defense slots like this, you have like your shock resist there, your burn resist there, etc. So resistances work great, and obviously in the raid, the more resist the better, especially if you're not really giving up damage to have those resists. As for damage on the build, we'll swap this to a name target. Now on average I'll get maybe 1.1, 1.2 mil, so we'll just have a crack at it here. We'll reload so we don't get the Optimist. There we go. Yeah, so there's 1.1, so that's a substantial amount of damage for a build not running on the ropes and not running Spotter, as well as Unstoppable Force and all those buffs. So I find that on-kill effects don't really work great in the raid, hence this build. And then also lastly, now this does tend to bug out from time to time, but Unbreakable, as you know, gives you 70% of your armor back when you hit 0. So let's see if the grenade does it or if it just kills me. Alright, so as you can see, I got my armor back there and I didn't die. Having Unbreakable is basically a free life. Should your armor have dropped to 0, chances are you're probably going to die anyway on the next bullet that hits you. So having that free life on a 1-minute internal cooldown is really good for the raid, especially with all the one-hit mechanics you can get. So that's it for the build. I'm not going to put any gameplay because I want to keep the video pretty short. There's going to be a written guide up on Reddit about it anyway. But that's all for now. Have a good day.